I've been doing some show prep, checking out other podcasts, and everywhere I look, I'm seeing a lot of young, attractive, very smart people. They have some amazing topics that people can actually utilize in their everyday lives. Then I realized, you're stuck with me. Let's get to it. Welcome. Another episode of IBF On Demand. I'm your old but sage host, Eric Wilson. You can reach out to me if you want at eric@ibf.org. It's eric@ibf.org. Of course, we have a sponsor, Arkiva, your one-plan S&OP software solution. I want to take a quick poll. Everybody out there. Okay, you ready? Raise your hand if you are under the age of 25, always wanted a career in demand planning or predictive analytics, and you have this forecasting stuff all figured out already. Raise your hand.
Anyone? Bueller?
That's what I thought. It seems we may not have a large younger audience watching these podcasts and listening to them on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast. These are available. I get that. I get that there's a generational gap sometimes in between the people that are experienced, are consuming this information, and the people just getting into the field. We're in serious trouble if you leave it at the old folks like me. We're going to need a new generation, Generation Pi, coming in and helping fill some of these gaps. I see three problems, though, with this. Number one, how do we inspire? How do we get the new generation into planning? Two, how does the people in the field gain the insights they need? And finally, how do we listen and understand this Generation Pi or this new generation coming in? Like most of my podcasts, I don't have the answers. I find the people who may have the answer. So with this, I decided to go someone much closer to this demographic than I am, be able to relate a little bit more, and has a lot of good insights into this as well. Jennifer is a senior planner at Hologic Incorporated. She has been only in the field for about 4 years, but already making a name for herself. She's a graduate from the University of Rhode Island with a BA in supply chain management. She's a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. She's a certified supply chain professional, and she's a certified professional forecaster, a CPF from the Institute of Business Forecasting. She is a member of the New England chapter of IBF Meetup. And now, add to her resume, she's the author of an upcoming peer-reviewed journal article coming up in the spring of the Journal of Business Forecasting about the first 100 days and what you need to do as a new demand planner. And she's also my very special podcast guest. Please help me welcome Jennifer. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've listened to this podcast all the time, so I'm so excited to actually be on the podcast. So thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on. I mean, it's great to have your perspective. I said, you don't mind me saying, a younger generation's perspective on this. Someone who hasn't been out of college too long and really has a different perspective than someone's been into it for 30 years. So I'm equally excited to have you on board as well.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. So I've been out of college just under 5 years. So I hope to, be able to give some perspective to those that might be in college or really young in their career, and also, women in supply chain, which are kind of far and few between. So, yeah.
Well, that's exactly why I want to have you on. And starting with that, what exactly got you into this field, as a woman, as someone just coming out of college. I know you had a supply chain type of degree, but what got you into demand planning forecasting as a woman? What got you started in this field?
Yeah, so I actually started like in school. I knew I wanted to go for business. You don't really hear about supply chain at all until you get to a college, specifically a business school. And so I just went into accounting, like almost everyone does when they go into business. And I kept hearing, I think it was my sophomore year, I kept hearing about this whole supply chain thing. It was just more like a buzzword, more than anything. And I had no idea what it was. And we had this thing. I went to the University of Rhode Island, and they had this event every fall called Career Day. And essentially that's when, all the students can go hear from alumni from, past years and like their different paths that they went down. And I still very vividly remember like standing outside the accounting track, and I'm like, I could just go here and hear everything that I always do all the time. Like I already know about accounting, or I could, go hear what like this new supply chain thing. And I got to hear about the different paths. And, the great thing about supply chain is there are so many different industries to go into. And I didn't want to be bored in my career. So I was like, I'm not going to be bored in supply chain. And I think any supply chain professional listening can definitely agree. So that's why I chose it in college. Yeah.
There's definitely nothing bored about this. I mean, so what part of it now that you're into it, and it's a little bit different probably than what you learned in college and, saw from even those career fairs, what part of it are you enjoying the most right now?
Yeah, so I was very lucky to get into the medical device industry and right out of school in a planning role. And what I really like specifically about planning, and I'm still in planning, but I'm more on the integration side of supply chain now, so integrating companies that were recently acquired. But what I really like about planning specifically, and what's always kept me in it, is just how you have to be a long-term type thinker. And we do a lot of firefighting in planning, of course. If there is a supply shortage or we completely missed the forecast or anything like that, we have to do a lot of firefighting, of course. But what I really like is the strategic side of it. So getting to work with the commercial team, the new product launch teams, manufacturing transfer teams, all these types of things, planning plays such a key role in it. And what I found very early in my career, like really like month 2 on the job, is how quickly you have to make decisions. So what I really like is in planning, having all the data and, knowing as much as I can about the business that I'm focused on for the product, and then being turned to make prioritization decisions and all of that. So that's what I still love to this day, is the strategicness of it and being able to make decisions using data.
Okay. You mentioned that, learned very early on in your career. You got a great article coming out. It's in the spring, Journal of Business Forecast. Should be coming out about the same time as this podcast. So check it out, forward.ibf.org. If you're not a member, check out, how you can get a copy of this recent Journal of Business Forecast. So you got a phenomenal article that just came out that really talks about I'd say the first 100 days as a new demand planner. So when you're looking at, as a new forecaster, somebody coming out of college or somebody coming just into this field, someone new to this role, that's really what your article talked about. You want to tell a little bit about what an outline of that article?
Yeah, sure. So first and foremost, and I think this is good advice for any role, but it's to be a sponge in that first 90 to 100 days. Just be a sponge. And in a career like planning and demand planning specifically, you need to know everything about the product lines that you're focused on. So you need to know the history of the product from the time it launched to where you're at now. You need to know about what other products it complements in the portfolio, what new product line, like what new product introductions are coming, all this types of stuff, and the actual market side. But then you, of course, need to know the data. And that's really where that first 90 days comes in, is you're learning the systems. Every single company has their own system. So even if you are a seasoned demand planner and you are going into your third demand planning role, you still have to spend that first 90 days trying to figure out the system, how to get the data, all that. And that is then, of course, goes into that next step, is you got to know who you're going to be working with and make really good decisions. Because in forecasting, we can sit behind a screen and come up with a statistical forecast and, the best numerical forecast ever. But if we don't have that market intelligence that comes directly from the product manager or the sales force, even finance, then that forecast isn't going to be good. So that's where that relationship building piece comes in. So making sure that you're knowing who to talk to and making really good relationships with those people is so, so key. And they're going to be looking forward to being able to lean on you for that data. You're going to be asked questions all the time about the history and all that kind of stuff on the data side. And those relationships are going to come in handy. And then, of course, executive communication. So we know in a really good S&OP or IBP process, the forecast means nothing if executive leadership isn't going to give the buy-in. It's not going to mean anything if you pass on the forecast to the manufacturing sites or the supply team and they don't do anything with it. So that's where that executive communication and persuasion comes in. So it's not just the technical skills, but I think in demand planning, it's really at least 50%, if not more, is on the soft skills side. So relationship building and the executive communication and persuasion skills.
Okay. So if I could unpack a little bit about what you just said, I heard, you being that sponge the first 90, 100 days. You talked about networking, relationships in there, and then communication, building those communication skills, especially on the executive level. Those were the three main kind of things kind of points that you had out of there. The being a sponge part, is that, you mentioned the systems, you mentioned the understanding understanding exactly, the products that you have and things of that sort. Is that being a sponge as far as you're still developing your career as well, and you're still learning different? I mean, I always say it's not what you know, it's knowing what you don't know type situation. Is that part of it, is knowing what you don't know? It really plays a key part in that?
Oh, absolutely. Even when I would even say in a role for a really long time, if you start to get complacent and you're like, I got this, I have great forecast accuracy, all of that, and you start to remove yourself and stop learning, whether that's the best methods in forecasting and in S&OP, or you stop building those relationships with your cross-functional colleagues, that can get really dangerous. So I do think that it's important to, as a sponge, being a sponge, meaning continue to keep learning and keep attending the conferences and listening to things like these podcasts. I think the worst thing you can do is stop learning. And that's where that be a sponge not only carries out for the first 90 days, but even more. And every single demand planner they have their own, demand planning is a science and an art. So I do think that it's important too for demand planners to continue to keep an open mind and go talk to other planners on the team and see what they're doing. So that's where that all comes down to sponge and trying new things.
Okay, so what I heard is people need to keep listening to these podcasts then. That's what I heard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And attending the conferences, of course.
And attending the conferences and buying my book.
Yep. Yes.
You mentioned that you said go out and talk to other demand planners, internally, externally types. Those are the relationship parts, which the second piece you talked about was that relationship part of it. I mean, that's networking. Once again, is that just internal, or is that really the external type networking as well when you're into these roles?
Mm-hmm. Oh, both. Absolutely both. So, yeah, I think the most important thing is, of course, you got to make the relationships with people on the team, because those are the people that you're working with. And then, of course, going outside the team and making those relationships with your cross-functional colleagues. But, also getting outside your shell and going to the conferences and networking events when the world's in a better place, of course. But doing those types of things and meeting others in the industry, because then you can see what else is out there. A career is no longer just one company. So you want to make sure that you are constantly building out that network with other planning professionals. And what I do think is interesting in planning is every single industry is slightly different. So how you forecast forecast maybe in like my industry, which is medical device, it's going to be so different than how someone, forecasts in the consumer products industry or versus electronics. So I think building those relationships with other planners and people outside of your company is also good, because you can learn about different techniques that you would have never known in your industry.
That's another thing. Is the relationships you build could help you, further on in your career. You may not know the person that may be your future boss, or a person that can help connect you with a opportunity in the future as well. So those relationships help as well. So now you
totally,
mentioned
absolutely.
Now the last one you had then was communication. I'll be honest with this one. I've seen in our profession a lot of times, especially people coming out very analytical degrees or skill sets, coming out of college and getting put into these roles or wanting to pursue these roles. Communication is not always a strong point. I don't know if they're not teaching it in college or if they're just analytical people that tend to go to these type of roles. But communication doesn't seem to be a strong point. You mentioned that as, Lori, something you need to build and work on in those first 90, 100 days type situation. How does the person, Lori, find those opportunities, build those skill sets? What do they do in the beginning to really start building some of those skills?
Yeah, I think the thing is, in school, if we think about like the education system and everything, when we think of like written communication, we think of 500-word essays and things like that. And but you go to send an email to a senior executive in a company, it better not be 500 words, right? So that's, the executive communication thing is absolutely a skill where I think everyone's is constantly working on that skill, even 40 years into a career, But I think where it really comes down to is, one, of course, internships. What I always tell students is get internships, because that's really how you learn to communicate in corporate America. And I would say when you are in your internships or your first entry level role, don't shy away from those opportunities to send that important email to a higher up person and have to really trim down the email to only hit the most important points or show data that's really easy to understand. I can definitely see where folks would be like, oh no, I'm at the lowest level of an organization, I'm just gonna ask my boss to send it. No, don't do that, because it's an opportunity, especially in supply chain, where those emails, you have no idea how up in an organization that's going to be forwarded if there's a major supply chain issue or anything like that. So I say, take the risk, really work on it. Hopefully you have a boss, and I do want to touch on this a little bit after, maybe after this, but make sure that you have a boss that's willing to invest the time to sit with you and have that patience to really critique those kind of emails. So that's really what I would say. Just don't. And
part to that
hopefully
point,
you have product lines that have product. Yeah.
Go ahead. To that point, you want to own your own brand. You own your own career map type situation. I'll get that in the closing. But so with that, you mentioned the boss. What are you looking for in your first roles? For a boss. Expand upon what you were just getting ready to say then.
Oh yeah. So honestly, I owe so much of the career I've had, so far, the success I've had so far, to the first two bosses that I've had, the first two managers. And when I was interviewing for roles going into my first role out of college, the decision that the most important thing that helped me make my decision was the manager that I was going to have. And in college, even if you go for supply chain, you don't learn how to do supply chain, or you don't learn how to do planning in school. You learn about the concepts, you learn about how to hit deadlines and everything like that, but you don't learn supply chain until you're thrown in it. And I think it's so important, for the number one consideration to have when you are picking a role is, who is your first manager going to be? Are they just trying to bring a lower level analyst onto the team to save money to for a budget? Obviously an entry level analyst is less for the company to pay an experienced planner or analyst. If that's the case, probably not good. In my case, my manager that hired me out of school, took the chance on me, was looking forward to developing someone younger and really being able to mold them. So I would say definitely look for someone that wants to coach you, that wants to spend the time with you to train you. And of course, I think also it's no secret that in supply chain or planning that you work more than the 40-hour a week, right? So I think it's important that you go into an industry that you are so passionate about, right? So if you're passionate about the sports and athletics industry, then find something, with a company like that. Or if you're passionate about like healthcare, like I am, that's what really drew me to where I am. So I don't mind putting in the extra hours, and I love going into work. So I say, who's going to be your first boss? Are they truly interested in molding you and developing you? And two, what industry are you really passionate about?
Great words of advice there for the next generation coming on. So, with that next generation coming on, as far as, do you have any advice to them as far as looking for that job? You already gave some good as far as what industries and bosses type situation, but where are they going to find information about this field? Because it's not, I don't know where they're consuming the information at, but advice to them where to go get this information, how to really start preparing now for when they come out of college. They're even more prepared. What's some advice if you had to go back to college and give a career day, quick 2-minute explanation? What would it be to those young skulls full of mush, Generation Pi?
Wow. Well, I would say, especially for supply chain, there are so many routes you can go, right? So you can go into procurement, you can go into planning and forecasting, which I personally think is the best, right? You could go into manufacturing, like transportation. There are so many routes that you could go, and that can be pretty overwhelming. So I would say the number one thing is talk to different people that are in the industry. And every single college has career days. Every single college has like supply chain management club, and they have guest speakers come in. If you don't for some reason, then just go on LinkedIn and type in, go to your school's alumni page and then find who was in supply chain. I promise you, people love to talk about what they do. So I'm sure that if you set up a 30-minute call with someone to hear more about what they do in that specific supply chain area, they would love to. So I would say, do your research. I'm going to be honest, I got really lucky getting into planning right out of school. I didn't know, I knew very little about it, and I got lucky. But I would say, don't leave it up to chance. So I would definitely say, do your research, talk to people, and get internships. Now, I'm on the other side of the table now where I'm actually hiring interns and entry-level analysts. And I'll tell you what I look for is things. One, coachability. So like I said, no one coming out of college knows what supply chain is, honestly. Like they know the basics, but they don't really know. So who is actually going to be able to be coached and learn really quick and is going to be a good fit on the team personality wise? That's what I'm looking for first. And then second, I'm looking for a solid resume of internship experience. Okay, so internship experience, part-time jobs are great, but internship experience is really where you learn how to do that executive communication, conduct yourself in a meeting, work cross-functionally to get projects done. So that's my advice. I would say is make sure you're highly coachable. And make sure your resume is standing out to really include internships. Like have at least 2 or 3 internships on there when you're starting to apply for those entry-level jobs.
Great advice. So, I don't know how much time we're going to have left, but I want to thank you while we still had a little bit of time left. I actually want to thank you because you mentioned at the beginning, women and, the youth type situation. And you did make a point to make, women in our field are scarce, more scarce than what it should be. So I want to thank you because what I think we need out there is role models. If you see people that look like you, then you're more apt to go into those type of fields because you can see yourself doing that. I want to thank you. I have a young daughter myself, and I want to thank you for being one of those role models out there that she can look up to, and I hope that other people take your lead as well. You're the trailblazers. You're the ones that really take on these roles, and you're doing a lot right out of college and expanding your careers. So thank you, and I hope there's more people out behind you just like you.
Oh, thank you. That really means a lot. Yeah, I will say that a big part of my decision to go into supply chain was because I saw two women who were just out of school only a few years and so successful already in their career in supply chain. If I hadn't seen those two women up there presenting, I wouldn't have been able to see myself in supply chain. Like they were doing so great. So I think that's such a good point. And I do want to say that women have a lot of skills just inherently that just really make them good at this job in planning. Okay, so where we are pretty good at relationship building usually. We, especially when we start to get into the management type roles, we have decent empathy, right? We have decent empathy skills already, and we're able to relate. So I think in planning, it's really important to be able to relate and put yourself into other people's perspectives, like the marketing perspective, all these different things. And be really open-minded. So I think women can do a fantastic job in supply chain. I know so many have. So I really do hope that more women are seeing themselves in the higher up positions. It's going to take time. But I think it's also on people like me now who have been out of school 5, 6, 7, 8 years soon, where when we're making hiring decisions, where we're taking this into account. Let's make sure that let's make sure that we're recruiting, female candidates and everything like that. And that's really the next step for someone like me, is to make sure we're really being super inclusive.
I agree. And I said, I hope people look at you as a role model and follow you now. So I want to thank you very much. We are actually out of time now, so I want to thank you for being part of this, and good luck continuing on your career. You made it past the first 100 days, and now you got the next 10 years, 20 years ahead of you. So good luck with where you're going.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, and thank you again for having me. I'm looking forward to reading your book. I see it in the background, so I'll make sure I'm gonna get that now.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
We used to always joke at conferences we'd go to, and matter of fact, this became almost a standing line when we would, on panels, we'd start off a panel by talking about this. Our first line, and actually I give credit to Pat Bauer, he's the one that first posed this question, but it is so true, and I've repeated it many times after that. No one gets to this field, this profession on purpose. No one generally gets to becoming a demand planner, a business forecaster. Someone who's sitting in those roles, generally you don't get there on purpose. Generally, it's a path through, winding through finance and coming in as an analyst and saying, hey, we need to come up with a unit forecast too, or coming from supply chain and saying, we need this to understand this, or coming out as an analyst and data and saying, you understand data. Can you tell us answers here as well? You generally are put into that position, or you get into roles inside your organization and you see what they're doing and how they're connected and how they're really bringing all the pieces together in an organization. And you start to strive for that position. But you don't come out of college or, in kindergarten, no one paints the picture for their mom and dad saying, when I grow up, I want to be a demand planning. You really get here by accident. And with that, I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to hear your story out there. Let me know your unique story. I want to find the most unique story out there of how you got into this profession. I might even bring you on if it is unique enough and we can make a story out of this. So please, reach out to me, eric@ibf.org, or put in the comments down below so everybody can see it. The thing is we have this whole generation gap happening. We have the people retiring. We have more and more needs coming on. We don't have the right skill sets of the people inside and people coming up. How do we fill this problem coin? The only way we're going to be able to fill it is with people like Jennifer, who's already doing a phenomenal job, and Generation Pi, this next generation that's coming up. So with that, I have some advice, not only for us, but for Generation Pi that maybe those one person out there that raised his hand, this is for you. So my advice for Generation Pi, the next generation coming into our field, own your brand. You have to own your brand. Don't expect anybody in a company to be able to figure out what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be doing it. Don't leave it up to them. Own it yourself. Own your brand. when you come into work, what you're doing, what you want to do, jobs you take, the roles, projects you eagerly take on. Own your brand inside your organization. That is critical, because that is really what is important as far as going forward. And part of that is bragging about yourself every now and then. I'm not talking about being cocky, conceited, or anything of that sort, but you accomplish something, let your boss know it was accomplished and what you did. You have to brag about it. You just have to put yourself out there. That is all part of owning your brand. Develop a career map. Because I said, don't wait for the companies to decide what you're going to do and where you're going to do it. Develop your own career map. You want to be a predictive analytics, vice president of predictive analytics inside your organization. Okay, no, that role doesn't even exist. Okay, well, would it exist someplace else? How can it be created in time inside your organization? You're starting off as an analyst. What do you need to get there? What skill set you need? What path you need? Who actually has these roles? What's that role look like? Develop your skills you're going to need, the path to get that. Develop your own career map. Don't wait for it to fall into these roles. Don't get here by accident. Plan your path. You want to sit in this seat? By the way, I'll let you if you want. What's your career path to become a director of thought leadership for an Institute of Business Forecasting? I don't know why you'd want it, but what's your career path for that if that's what you wanted? Next, be willing to take a risk, especially early in your careers. Those projects that come on, be willing to be part of the project, willing to take a leadership role. Be willing to take the risks. It's actually, you're going to find those people who come with, solutions, come with, ideas, people who come with, different challenges that they're willing to take on, is rewarded ultimately in their career. Be an influencer is next. I don't care what level you are, what level you come in on, everybody can be an influencer. I started off as an analyst type of role. And I started running an S&OP where I had a CEO and CFO sitting across the table at different opinions of what's going on, and I was moderating of that conversation. And I controlled that room because it was my meeting I was having. I was considered an influencer in that organization. It doesn't matter what level you are. It matters what you want to do. It matters how you do it. It matters the confidence you come in with it as well. That's how you can become an influencer. A title does not dictate your influence. Your attitude dictates your influence. Once again, I'm not talking being cocky and overbearing. You're in a work environment. You have to understand the politics behind it as well. But you understand those politics. You can navigate the politics. You have the confidence and you can willing to take those risks. You owning your own brand, you can become an influencer. And finally, the most important lesson I can tell you, this next generation that's coming up, is continuous learning. Don't stop. Continue learning, continuing to grow. Don't stop now, because there's going to still be gaps in what you're doing. There's changes that's occurring. Continue to learn, continue to grow going forward. So with that does it for me. I think I'm going to go record a TikTok mashup now. My name is Eric Wilson. You can find me at eric@ibf.org. That's eric@ibf.org. Arkiva, they are the sponsors. They're the One Plan S&OP software solution. They sponsor these podcasts. Check out membership. Check out ibf.org, what they can do for you. Together, we're one big happy family. I don't care what your age is. We're a diverse organization here. Come one, come all. One big happy family. Check that out. Membership, ibf.org. I'll be the grumpy old poppy as part of this organization. And you can please check out this, check out other podcasts. And don't forget, from your grumpy old poppy, don't forget, wash your hands.